Even in darker ages, man was an intrepid traveller. Yet, in the great sweep of geological time, the harsh rock of these limestone cliffs was unknown to man. 500 years ago, Christopher Columbus made landfall here, on the shores of the Atlantic Ocean. From then on, the archipelago of the Bahamas, a gigantic sweep of 700 islands, was the sun-drenched threshold to the Americas. And the silence of centuries was shattered by the Spanish conquistadores, the great English navigators Drake and Hawkins, the legendary buccaneers Blackbeard and Charles Vane. A shallow sea the Spaniards called Bahamas.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to land at Nassau, New Providence Island. The temperature is 79 degrees Fahrenheit, 26 centigrade, and the local time is 4 p.m. On behalf of Captain Richards and his crew, I would like to say goodbye. We hope you've enjoyed your flight and look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Today, the new buccaneers fly in by jet, big ones, daily from Europe and the Americas to Freeport and Nassau. But instead of searching for pieces of eight, the latest visitors are after different gold. The Bahamas' priceless and intangible asset, the sun. A turbulent, romantic history has given present place names a dramatic sense of a multicultural past. Paradise, New Providence, Eleuthera, Spanish Wells, the islands of Bimini, Andros and San Salvador. There's Cat Island and Crooked Island, the Ragged Islands, Great Abaco Island and Rum Key. It's full of banks and channels, reefs, passages, sounds and keys. What was once a mariner's nightmare is now an archipelago of paradise, which liberates the visitor's soul. A 19th century visitor called them the Isles of Perpetual June. They're insulated from the continental cold of the American mainland by the Florida Channel, but cooled in summer by the northeast trades. Frost and snow are unthinkable, and the last snowflake fell in 1798, the year of the French Revolution. Nassau man, and woman too, are a throwback to their marine origins. Even the furniture's adapted to a web-footed life. In Nassau, the Bahamian capital, the dolphin too is bent on pleasure. But then, the human race likes its fellow creatures to be just like them. And in other ways, they're more sensible than us. Several million years ago, they opted for the water, and they've been there ever since. Now they're learning that showbiz pays. Leaping for tea is a trick we've yet to learn. Dolphins apart, the Bahamas sprawl across what Hemingway called the Great Blue River, the Gulf Stream, which teems with turtle and tuna, marlin and sailfish, sea lions, snappers, groupers, wahoos and bonitas. Off some of the islands are the greatest fishing holes on earth. There are plenty of fish for a mutual gawk, and there are plenty of fish for an angler's hook. You can play it either way. Captain Woodes Rogers Walk was named after the first royal governor of the Bahamas, who was appointed by George I. Rogers, himself a privateer, a poacher turned gamekeeper, walked here between lines of penitent pirates that he'd just defeated to read the royal proclamation that made the Bahamas British. And he celebrated by symbolically hanging the first 8 buccaneers he laid hands on. It's a Caribbean crossroads for the international businessman. You can smell the tropics and the languid names: sapodilla, mangoes, guavas, pigeon peas and ochre. To Bahamians, Nassau Market is where the bargains are. The straw market in Nassau's Rawson Square is the island's gallery of the crafts which have flourished in the wake of piracy. A quaint old Bahamian custom, perhaps? This custom is international. The Bahamas are in the sterling area, but their official denomination is the dollar. Yet for 2 centuries they were short of sterling, and the Bahamians used Dutch, French or Spanish coinage. Today, American and Canadian dollars are legal tender, once you've settled on a price. A free enterprise outlook is the logical outcome of privateering origins. The swish of car tires has replaced the footsteps of mariners' boots and scraping of cutlasses on the cobbled streets. But there's still a surrey with a fringe on top for those who want to see the colonnaded facades of a colonial age at a colonial pace. In 1969, the Bahama Islands became a self-governing part of the Commonwealth. The Queen's representative is the governor, whose seat is Government House, guarded by Christopher Columbus. But the British are still responsible for external affairs and defense. But there's one very un-British characteristic of these islands, and that's tax, or the lack of it. The Bahamas thrive without income tax, capital gains, or sales tax. Money for public services and schools comes from customs revenue, and a levy on a favorite Bahamian industry: gambling. The Bahamians are now a polyglot mixture, a carefree, friendly people more concerned with today than yesterday and optimistic about tomorrow. Many are descended from plantation workers who were still in bondage less than 150 years ago. With the old slavery abolished, there's only one kind left, and it begins with the 2 times table. Queen Victoria would not be amused to hear that Queen Elizabeth is now only the symbolic head of state. The Bahamas have their own democratically elected parliament, and the governor, who embodies the Queen, signs on the dotted line whenever internal legislation is passed. In the Bahamas, the politics of parliament are the politics of the people. To the Bahamian, Politics add spice to life and point to conversation. With the Bahamian people at peace with themselves, life takes its own leisurely course in the island settlements. But other people just can't sit still. They've just got to keep hitting and chasing that little white ball, and the less they hit it, the happier they are. This part of the world's a magnet to the international golfing set, and it's a tribute to man's ingenuity that lush courses and clubhouses have bloomed where before there was only limestone rock. And man's changing hand has endowed the Bahamas with tropical treasures of another kind: hibiscus, oleander, poinciana, and bougainvillea. A profusion of intoxicating color, sometimes wild, sometimes cultivated. It matters not. At night, they drench the air with perfume, and by day, there's the music of the hummingbird in the trees. For all his successes on the land, man has failed to change the sea, one of the Bahamas' priceless assets. For on the banks and shoals, the variety of fish is unparalleled. Going fishing is what Bahamians say when they're setting off to earn a crust. And nowadays, fishing is no longer a subsistence life, with families dependent upon a fisherman's luck. There are enough fish to feed a multitude, and the eternal appetites of small boys. You can fish among the coral reefs, or cast a line from the ocean-going motor cruisers. You can fish for the big game of the sea, the blue marlin, or scuba dive to stalk the myriad bonefish on the tidal flats and shallow banks. If there's no pleasure in hunting fish, and yet the emerald waters are entrancing still, there's a unique way of joining the multicolored wildlife who live in the world below. It's a tranquil world of gardens landscaped by nature, and yet as old as the earth itself. Up above, a trap is baited for the wary shellfish. This is treasure of a different kind. Ignored, of course, by the adventurers and privateers who sailed these waters in their squalid search for gold. The adventure is provided now by the very inhabitants of the sea. Through a water glass darkly, the traps 60 feet below on the ocean floor seem close enough to touch. Bahamian waters are the clearest in the world. The gentle islands are crossed by no rivers, and the waters are unclouded by their sediment. rod and line have outmoded the musket and cutlass. Too subtle for gold, silver or pearl, they entice a more sophisticated treasure. Now sails filled and streamers waving, courted by all the winds that hold them play, come boats of all shapes and sizes. Where Spanish galleons and English frigates skirmished in the Sounds, now the sailing dinghies run and beat in friendly competition. The Bahama Islands clasp the sailboats to their bosom. Cutters, schooners, dinghies, which sail an archipelago protected by coral reefs. The islands are the weathered peaks of gigantic mountain ranges, which form a sand and limestone plateau only feet above the sea. The Bahamas are true coral islands, formed quite recently in the Great Ice Age. Nearly all the islands are fringed by coral reefs on their ocean sides. Inside are wide lagoons, nature's gift to the helmsman. Now many of this necklace chain of islands have been declared a natural park. Languorous days of happiness afloat, puffed along by the wind and caressed by the sun. The coral fan is a canvas for some Man Friday who was here. As the sun sinks into an inky ocean, another Bahamian night begins. Lights shimmering over the harbour herald a nocturnal life. The Bahamians relish a party and are always looking for an excuse to celebrate. Even if they haven't got an official opportunity of their own, like their Christmas carnival called Junkanoo, they will celebrate anyone else's holiday with their own infectious brand of gaiety. They're as nocturnal as owls, and their haunts attract top international cabarets. A sense of the flutter is a trait that Bahamians understand. And although there's nothing which makes a gambler here luckier than anywhere else, it may be consolation to know that losing helps pay for the island's social services. The tensions and excitement of gaming are sentiments Blackbeard would have understood. They give an edge to the relaxation and contentment each day has brought. And fortune smiles benignly on all, those who are rich and those who are not so rich. And when that easy fortune has been lost or won, the pursuit of pleasure is everlasting, until dawn brings another day. Said Christopher Columbus, the beauty of these islands surpasses that of any other land as much as the day surpasses the night in splendor. He wrote this about islands then untouched, except by the hand of primitive Indians. In spite of their early history of swashbuckling and strife, the Bahama Islands are now a haven of peace. To the sun-saturated coves, reefs, and sandy beaches, the cobalt and sapphire waters of the Caribbean and Atlantic Ocean, man, the intrepid traveler, came. Like some exotic flower, a people flourished. Together, man and nature created a paradise in the deep blue sea. A paradise linked to the world by the air bridge of today.